Hey y'all, I'm Jamie with SavorySaver. I share gluten-free recipes, tips, tricks, and resources to make your gluten-free lifestyle easier. And today we're making soup. This is polenta soup with kale and parmesan. It's a hearty meatless soup that you're not even gonna miss the meat in it. It's got kale, polenta, white beans, parmesan cheese. It's creamy, it's delicious, it's a little salty. Let's get started on this recipe. Okay, before we get started on the actual cooking, let's prep our veg. There's a couple things I want to show you guys. Even though most of you can chop an onion, I just want to show a couple little tricks on a couple things. So I'm going to leave the onion for a minute and show you the kale. So this is curly kale. You could also use Tuscan kale for this recipe. You would probably use one small bunch of Tuscan kale if you're using that for the recipe. I used maybe a third to a half of a regular bunch of curly kale. And once you clean your kale, what you want to do to get the leaves off is grip the back of it almost like a claw and then pull, and that'll pull the stem away from the leaves. And you can use these leaves because this is tough and we don't want to use this part. We only want the leaves. So we're gonna move that to the side because we have our leaves here. And we wanna I just bunch it up and I run through it once to break it down some. This over here. And then run through it a few times with your knife. You just wanna break it down into bite-sized pieces. It'll wilt up some in the soup, but it doesn't wilt like spinach would. So you want to cut it up smaller than you would spinach because spinach wilts up to nothing. Then we can move that over to our colander with the rest of it that's already been cut up. And then I've got 2 cloves of garlic that's going in here. We'll cut that onion in a minute once we have room on our cutting board. And guys, I just cut it in half and then I will run through it with a knife long ways and cut it into sticks. And then I'll just dice it or mince it from there. You could grate it into the soup directly if you wanted to. I'll move that to the side. And then I've got 1 small sprig of rosemary. I want about a tablespoon of it once we're done chopping it up. So I've rinsed it off. And then to stem the rosemary, you do the same thing like you did with the kale. Start at the top, work backwards, and it should come right off that stem. And then usually the top part is more tender, so you can usually just break that off and cut that up. So we want to mince that up finely. And then one thing I've started doing recently is if I only have a couple small things on the cutting board and I'm not gonna move them directly into the pan, what I've started doing is piling them up. So I'll move everything together. Especially on a small cutting board, this works. So get it all piled up, take your small bowl, cover up your ingredients, and then we do a flip. And I slide them off. I don't know if you can see that or not, but then I slide it off and everything's in my dish. That way there I can just move it into the pot that I'm cooking or the fry pan. So we've got that ready. Let's do our onion real quick. This is just a yellow onion. You could use white onion if you wanted, probably red onion if that's what you use. The last time I made this, I used a sweet onion. We just wanna chop that up. Once I get to the end, I usually push it down to the side, and we'll run it through a couple times that way. And the last of our vegetables is 1 stalk of celery. So you want it about the same size as the onions. So we'll just do have it like that, have it like that, just to make less work. Dice it up. And all our vegetables are ready. So we are going to move to the stove and we will get to cooking. Okay, so we're gonna start our soup. I've got a medium-sized pot here. I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Somewhere in there. That's probably 2.5 or so, maybe 3. We're gonna put the heat onto medium and we're gonna let it heat up. Once our oil's hot, we can add our onion and our celery. We'll add that in there. Let's give it a stir. And we want to saute this for 3 to 5 minutes, just until the onion and the celery start to turn translucent. Okay, once our onions and celery have softened some, we can move to the next step. We're going to add our garlic and rosemary. And this is just going to take a second. We don't want it to burn. You want to add some pepper. So let's add, I don't know, pepper's always to taste, so let's start with that. We'll also add a little salt, but I don't want to add too much because I'm actually using bouillon today. And that has a lot of salt in it, so we can adjust that later. And we'll give it a stir. Now we're going to add our broth or our bouillon, whatever you want to add. You want 2 quarts of chicken stock or vegetable stock or water if you didn't have either. So there's 4 cups there. Let me get another 4. Here's 4 more cups. Now I'm going to add my bouillon. I'm using Tone's chicken, which is gluten-free. And this gluten-free bouillon I get at BJ's Wholesale, or Sam's Club has a brand as well that's gluten-free. This actually may be Sam's Club. So let me add my bouillon. I want almost 2 tablespoons. I'll probably go a little shy. So that'll start dissolving as it heats up. Once your bouillon is dissolved or you've added chicken broth, we can now add our polenta or coarse ground cornmeal. This is 3/4 cup. We want to add that in and whisk it because we don't want any lumps. So just do it a little at a time. This is going to give our soup flavor. It's going to help thicken our soup. Okay, so everything's mixed in, and now we need to let our soup cook. So we are going to bring this up to a simmer, and once it comes to a simmer, we're going to reduce it down to low, medium, low. And while it simmers for another 15 minutes on low or medium, low, we want to make sure we stir it every few minutes, and you want to go all the way down to the bottom and make sure you run your spoon along the bottom because we don't want anything to stick, because the polenta may try to do that. So we're gonna cook for 15, stirring every few minutes, scraping up that bottom, and then we'll come back and finish the soup. Okay, so our polenta and kale soup has been cooking for 15 minutes. I stirred it probably every 2 to 3 minutes just to make sure it wasn't sticking. I actually get out the spatula with the flat bottom so I could scrape the bottom. And the more you come in and stir, the much less it's gonna stick. And as you can see, our soup is thickened up quite nicely. So now there's a few more things we need to add. So for one, I've got 2 cans of cannellini beans that I've drained and rinsed, and I'm gonna add those. And if this is too many beans for you, cut it back to 1 can, because now it looks like we have a problem with our pot being too small. And I have to add all of this kale still. So let's see if we can do this, or if I'm gonna have to put this on a bigger pot. And guys, all you wanna do at this point is it really needs about 5 minutes just to heat the beans through and to wilt down that kale just a little bit. Okay, this is the last of our kale. So I'm gonna get everything stirred into the soup. Okay, once everything is heated through, the last thing we need to do is add some Parmesan cheese and make sure we have enough salt and pepper in it. So I've got 4 ounces of Parmesan cheese that I shredded, and it's a little bit of Parmesan Reggiano and a little bit of just Parmesan because I didn't want to pay the price for the Reggiano when I went to the store to get more, because I usually keep some in the house. So get what you can afford. I do not think the powdered stuff would work here, the stuff that comes in that green canister, but you can try it by all means. We always have that in the house, so I'm not going to say that we don't use it, because we do. More often than I use this, as a matter of fact. I use this to top pasta in that when I can, when I have it, but if I don't have it, I reach for the canister. We also use the canister anytime there's pizza in the house. So we typically have bruschetta gluten-free pizza here in the house, and that's usually what gets put on top of the pizza is the powdered stuff. So we want to add our Parmesan cheese and stir it until it's melted, and our soup will be ready to bowl up. Guys, soup's on. I've already checked it for salt. I didn't feel that it needed any. If your soup needs more, add a little more. Let's give it a try. Got those beans and that kale. Guys, this soup is creamy, and the only thing in it that really made it creamy was the Parmesan, if you're looking at it from a dairy standpoint. The polenta, since it's all cooked, it acted as a thickening agent and helped make the soup creamier as well. We've got some good protein from those white beans. We've got nutrients from the beans and the kale. Guys, this is just a warming soup. It's hearty. You're not gonna be hungry still after a bowl of this. And if you are, have a second bowl. I hope you give this recipe a try. Please consider subscribing. Leave me any comments below, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.